Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching Eagle News International. On tonight's headlines. A large tornado tore through Arkansas, causing significant damage, according to the governor of the southern U.S. state, as rescuers rushed to aid residents and hospitals said they were bracing for more casualties. Mozambique is going through its worst cholera outbreak in more than a decade in the wake of Cyclone Freddy, according to the World Health Organization. 15 people were injured today when two trains derailed as stormy winds lashed northwestern Switzerland. A New York grand jury indicts Donald Trump over hush money payments made to a porn star, making him the first person ever to serve as U.S. president and be charged with a crime. A large tornado tore through Arkansas tonight, causing significant damage, according to the governor of the southern U.S. state, as rescuers rushed to aid residents and hospitals said they were bracing for more casualties. Take a look. Now, Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders wrote that police and emergency services were already working to assist anyone injured and called for residents to stay aware as the National Weather Service forecast more storms later in the afternoon. The city's mayor, Frank Scott, tweeted that the storm had been devastating and said he had asked Sanders' office to send National Guards to help with the cleanup. Debris was shooting up into the air as the tornado slowly churned and heavy rain poured down. Multiple power lines were ripped out of the ground and acres of farmland damaged. At one point, the sky darkened quickly just before the twister made its way across a street. The tornado had touched down near the state capital, Little Rock, and had torn down trees and damaged houses. More than 70,000 people were without power across the state. A spokesperson for the Baptist Health Medical Centers in Little Rock and North Little Rock, Arkansas, said the hospitals are treating 23 people for injuries. 5 of those patients are in critical condition. Experts are saying the safest place to be during a tornado is in an underground shelter. But if you find yourself on the road during a tornado threat, it's important to know how to take cover properly when there are little options. Experts are also saying never to seek shelter under a bridge or overpass during a tornado. In other news, seismic activity has increased at Colombia's Nevada del Ruiz volcano, which killed 25,000 people in an eruption 38 years ago. Authorities now are warning of a probable new outbreak. The Ministry of Mines said there has recently been a significant increase in seismic activity, while Colombia's SGC Geologic Service warned of a probable eruption within days or weeks. And President Gustavo Petro tweeted, "We have an orange alert due to the change in seismology at the Ruiz volcano. Mayors must prepare the protocols for this state of alert." According to Colombia's UNGRD Disaster Risk Management Unit, the orange level meant the likelihood of an eruption bigger than any in the last decade. The 5,300-meter Colossus in western Colombia is one of the many volcanoes on the Ring of Fire, a path around the Pacific Basin characterized by active volcanoes and frequent earthquakes. More than 100 illegally started fires ravaged northern Spain on Friday, according to authorities, while blazes that raged for over a week in the country's east were under control. In total, 119 fires continued to rage on Friday afternoon in the region of Asturias and in neighboring Cantabria, according to the authorities of the northern regions. Now, of these fires, 91 were in Asturias. At the worst point, there were 160 fires in the 2 mountainous regions known for their forests, which are vulnerable to forest fires, but authorities said were started by criminals. Considered the first major fire of the year in Spain, a total of 4,700 hectares were ravaged. 1,300 people were forced to evacuate, but they have now started to return to home. Spain has faced a long drought after 3 years of inadequate rainfall, and authorities are warning that seasonal fires, until now generally limited to summer, will now become a feature of spring and autumn as a result of climate change. Meanwhile, hundreds of Thai firefighters and soldiers are battling a forest blaze less than 100 kilometers from Bangkok. It's also threatening to worsen the country's air pollution, which has sent nearly 2 million people to hospitals with respiratory illnesses since the beginning of this year. Take a look.
ก็จะเป็นสักวันถึง2 วันนะครับจากสถานการณ์ปัจจุบันเนี่ยเพราะว่าค่อนข้างยากเพราะว่ามันเป็นเขาแหลมแล้วก็หินเยอะใช่
ค่ะลำบากแล้วทีนี้เมื่อวานก็มีการทำฝนหลวงแต่ก็ไม่เป็นผลเพราะว่าอากาศมันร้อนค่ะแล้วก็มีฮอมาอุ้มน้ำที่จะมาเทใส่ไฟมันก็ยากเพราะว่าเปลวไฟมันขึ้นสูงแล้วฮอก็ลงต่ำไม่ได้การเทน้ำก็มีการพลาดจุดเป้าหมายแต่ก็ทำให้ป่าชุ่มชื้นขึ้นมาหน่อยนึงแบบลด
Now, the government said a mountain known as Khao Layam in Nakhon Nayok that was engulfed in flames since Wednesday has been brought under control. Several wildfires are also reported from protected forests in Thailand's north, with several hotspots across the borders in neighboring Myanmar and Laos. The blaze comes as Thailand grapples with a spike in pollution caused in part by agricultural burning that has seen the air in some northern cities rank among the dirtiest and most hazardous in the world this week. Bangkok and other Thai cities have grappled with poor air quality in recent years, with pollution tending to get worse in the dry season around December to February due largely to agricultural burning in Thailand and neighboring countries and vehicular emission. Thai Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha urged the top official from regional bloc ASEAN to help coordinate efforts to reduce cross-border pollution caused by agricultural burning. Farmers across Southeast Asia burn off stubble in fields every year after harvest time, causing widespread air pollution. Thailand's north is particularly affected, and this week, the cities of Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai topped monitoring firm IQ Air's worst air quality list, and that beats the likes of Delhi and Beijing. Now, 15 people were injured tonight when 2 trains derailed as stormy winds lashed northwestern Switzerland. Take a look. Now, the incidents on regional passenger rail lines took place within 20 minutes of each other and about 30 kilometers apart, according to the 30 kilometers apart north of the Swiss capital Bern. 3 people were injured in the first derailment, including the driver, and 12 were hurt in the second, including 1 person with serious injuries. Wind speeds of 136 kilometers per hour were recorded nearby. Police said 1 train carrying 16 people derailed in the lakeside village of Lurch at around 4:30 p.m. local time. While a strong wind was blowing, the front carriage of the train overturned on the right side of the track, slipped down a small embankment for a few meters, and finally came to a halt, according to the Bern Cantonal Police in a statement. A second train, meanwhile, carrying 54 passengers, derailed 20 minutes later in the village of Buren-Zamhof. Now, police said the driver's carriage and 2 other carriages came off the tracks, with the front carriage hitting a mast. All 3 ended up on their sides. 9 adults and 3 children were injured and taken to hospitals. 1 man suffered serious injuries and was flown to hospital by helicopter. Switzerland is renowned for its extensive and punctual rail network, with frequent services between cities, towns, and even villages. Rail enthusiasts come from all over the world to ride on some of the most picturesque routes or those with exceptionally steep climbs. In tonight's other news, Donald Trump's legal team went on the offensive tonight following his historic indictment, vowing the former president would never seek a plea deal and was ready to fight all charges. Take a look. This is an attack on our country, the likes of which has never been seen before, according to the former U.S. President Donald Trump, reacting in a post on his own social media platform, Truth Social. Trump, who is seen to be the frontrunner to be the Republican nominee in the 2024 election, has branded all of the investigations witch hunts and political persecutions. Trump is to be booked, fingerprinted, and will have a mugshot taken at a Manhattan courthouse on Tuesday afternoon before appearing before a judge as the first ever American president to face criminal charges. Now, on March 18, Trump had declared he expected to be arrested within days over the payment to Stormy Daniels, who received $130,000 weeks before the election that brought Trump to power, to stop her from going public about a tryst she claims they had a decade earlier. While the former president's son, Eric, assailed the opportunistic targeting of a political opponent, an attorney for Daniels, meanwhile, welcomed the news as proof that no one is above the law. And Kevin McCarthy, meanwhile, the top Republican in the House of Representatives and second in line to the presidency, and others, lashed out at Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, a Democrat, who pushed the criminal inquiry against Trump. Bragg has irreparably damaged our country in an attempt to interfere in our presidential election. According to McCarthy, he weaponized our sacred system of justice against President Donald Trump. The American people will not tolerate this injustice, and the House of Representatives will hold Alvin Bragg and his unprecedented abuse of power to account. Now, Trump, who was indicted by a grand jury on Thursday, becoming the first U.S. president ever to face criminal charges, will surrender at a Manhattan courthouse on Tuesday, according to his lawyers. According to U.S. media, it is expected to happen at 2:15 in the afternoon, local time. Trump will be fingerprinted and have a mugshot taken, but Joe Tacopina, one of Trump's lawyers, said the former president would not be placed in handcuffs. A grand jury indicted Trump after hearing testimony from a number of witnesses about a $130,000 payment to adult film actress Stormy Daniels to buy her silence about an affair she had with Trump in 2006. Following his booking, the 76-year-old Trump will be arraigned before a judge, at which time he will be presented with the charges and enter a plea. The judge then decides whether a defendant should be released on bail or taken into custody. His lawyer, Mr. Tacopina, said Trump will plead not guilty. Once Trump is arraigned and enters a plea, there will be a series of preliminary court hearings to set a date for a trial and decide on witnesses and evidence. Mr. Tacopina said he would seek to have the charges dismissed without going to trial, but that there is zero chance that the former president will enter into a plea agreement with prosecutors. Now, Stormy Daniels, the adult star embroiled in the sex scandal behind Donald Trump's indictment, said in a UK newspaper interview published on Friday that the criminal charges show he is no longer untouchable. Daniels, a 44-year-old former adult movie actress, told Britain's Times that the indictment issued on Thursday against the ex-president was monumental and epic. However, Ms. Daniels, who is now 44 years old, also said she believes the indictment will continue to divide people as the U.S. deals with an ongoing rise in political violence. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden called for Russia to release Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, who is being held on espionage charges, while rebuffing a call from the paper's editorial board to expel Russian journalists from the U.S. First, let's listen in.
Concerned about possible protests in the wake of the indictment?
No, I'm not going to talk about something.
What's your message to Russia right now as they're detaining this Wall Street Journal reporter?
Let him go. Please.
Have you spoken with his family?
Well, it seems that the Kremlin is changing the rules. We know that for almost 20 years, the Kremlin was fine at expelling journalists, and already 2 years after Putin came to power, more than 40 journalists lost their visas, but they never arrested foreign journalists on charges of espionage. It is a new law, and it's a very strong signal to all foreign journalists who are still in the country. Well, it means that all the old ideas about how foreign journalists could work in Moscow, like talking to the foreign ministry or to the administration of the president, to understand where we are with the Kremlin, they are not good anymore. Now the only people who are actually in the know are the FSB and Vladimir Putin, and it means that there are no rules understandable for foreign journalists in Moscow.
Now, this is Mr. Gershkovich, and he is detained in Yekaterinburg, around 1,100 miles east of Moscow, and is being held in detention in Moscow until May 29, pending trial. He is believed to be the first foreign journalist held for spying in post-Soviet Russia, and his arrest is expected to escalate the Kremlin's confrontation with the West. In other news tonight, the Philippine economy may post an even slower growth this year as inflation continues to increase, that according to the World Bank. In its latest East Asia and the Pacific, or EAP, economic update for April 2023, the country's gross domestic product is expected to post a growth of only 5.6% this year, lower than the 5.8% forecast it made in October last year. The World Bank said among the larger economies of the region, most, including Indonesia, the Philippines, and Vietnam, are anticipated to grow more modestly in 2023 than in 2022. World Bank chief economist for East Asia Pacific, Aditya Matthew, said at a virtual briefing today, said the country needs to address supply constraints in its fight against inflation. However, Mr. Matthew also said Philippine economic growth will still be driven by domestic demand, an increase in private investments due to recent reforms, and sustained growth in public investment. In other news, Virgin Orbit, the satellite launch company founded by Richard Branson, said it will lay off 85% of its employees, according to a filing to the U.S. stock market regulator. The California-based company will lay off around 675 people to reduce expenses in light of its inability to secure meaningful funding, according to a filing to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission dated on Thursday. The job cuts are expected to be mostly complete by April 3. Virgin Orbit suffered a major setback earlier this year when an attempt to launch the first rocket into space from British soil ended in failure. The company organized the mission along with the UK Space Agency and Cornwall Spaceport to launch the satellites, to launch 9 satellites into space. Earlier this month, the company suspended operations for several days while it held funding negotiations and explored strategic opportunities. CEO Dan Hart told employees, quote, "Unfortunately, we have not been able to secure the funding to provide a clear path for this company." That is according to a recording obtained by CNBC. The United States said that reprisals by China over a visit by Taiwan's president would not alter U.S. policy, insisting that such stops are nothing new. China has already warned the U.S. that it is playing with fire over the trip by President Tsai Ing-wen, who is in New York on what is officially a transit stopover on her way to Latin America. Take a look.
Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen is transiting through New York en route to Central America. Taiwan has also confirmed that President Tsai will again transit through the United States on her return to Taiwan next week, this time via Los Angeles. The facts regarding this transit are clear. It is consistent with long-standing U.S. practice. It is consistent with our unofficial relations with Taiwan, and moreover, it is consistent with the U.S. One China policy, which remains unchanged. This transit is routine. We see no reason for Beijing to turn this transit into something that it is not, or to use it to overreact. Unilateral attempts to change the status quo will not pressure the United States government to alter our long-standing practice to facilitate transits through the United States. From the point of view of both deterrence and diplomacy, we are working to preserve peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait, which is critical to regional and global security and prosperity. This will require acting now to bolster Taiwan's resilience against PRC pressure. We have a proven track record of doing just that, from launching an ambitious new trade initiative to announcing around $5 billion in arms sales so far under this administration, including the largest number of arms sales in 20 years, and setting up efforts to accelerate delivery of arms to Taiwan.
中方坚决反对任何形式的美台官方往来，坚决反对台湾当局领导人以任何名义、任何理由纂美，坚决反对美方违反一个中国原则，同台湾当局进行任何形式的接触。 事实再次证明，台湾当局领导人赴美过境是假，谋求突破、宣扬台独是真。我想强调的是，无论台湾当局说什么、做什么，都改变不了台湾是中国一部分的事实。任何人、任何势力都无法阻挡中国实现统一。
Now, the president had stopped in New York on the way and on her return trip has announced plans to meet House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in California. Chai arrived in Guatemala on Friday afternoon where she was received with military honors and met by Foreign Minister Mario Bocaro. Meanwhile, the United States said it planned to open an embassy in Vanuatu, its latest effort to beef up its presence in the South Pacific, where China has been seeking to expand its clout. A State Department statement said an embassy in the capital Port Villa would allow the U.S. government to deepen relationships in the archipelago and to set up development assistance, including on climate. President Joe Biden's administration, with bipartisan support from Congress, has been expanding the U.S. role in an area that once received limited attention after a shock last year when China reached a security pact with the Solomon Islands. Despite denials from the Solomon Islands, U.S. and Australian officials have voiced fears that the pact could open vast waters to China's military. The U.S. in February opened an embassy in the Solomon Islands, and Vice President Kamala Harris announced at a summit last year that the U.S. would also open new embassies in Kiribati and Tonga. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is warning travelers to watch for symptoms of the Marburg virus. The Marburg virus causes severe fever, often accompanied by bleeding and organ failure. It's also part of the so-called filovirus family that also includes Ebola. Equatorial Guinea on the coast in West Africa declared an outbreak of the virus disease in mid-February with cases spread across multiple provinces. Take a look.
First, to the outbreaks of Marburg virus disease in Equatorial Guinea and Tanzania. In Equatorial Guinea, WHO is on the ground with partners supporting the Ministry of Health to respond to the outbreak. We have deployed teams to assist with case finding, clinical care, logistics, and community engagement. We have also helped to establish treatment units in the affected areas. The number of officially reported cases remains at 9, with 7 deaths in 3 provinces. However, these 3 provinces are 150 kilometers apart, suggesting wider transmission of the virus. WHO is aware of additional cases, and we have asked the government to report these cases officially to WHO. In Tanzania, the number of confirmed cases remains at 8, with 5 deaths. 3 people are currently being treated in a health facility. 2 health workers are among the confirmed cases, including 1 death. So far, all of the reported cases are in 1 region. A WHO committee has now reviewed the evidence for 4 vaccines. Trial protocols are ready, and our partners are ready to support the trials.
One of the things we are very concerned about is the potential for the virus to change to become more, not only more transmissible, but more severe. And so we have to remain vigilant. We have to have systems that are in place that have strong surveillance so that we can track variants, the known variants that are in circulation, and detect new ones, so that we can have agile systems to scale up or scale down the need for clinical care, making sure that we have good antivirals that are in use and given to patients who need them when they need them to prevent severe disease, and really critically to focus on vaccinating those who are most at risk.
The CDC is now sending personnel to Africa to help stop outbreaks of the Marburg virus disease. And they're also urging travelers to certain countries to take precautions. Marburg virus is a rare and deadly virus that causes fever, chills, muscle pain, rash, sore throat, diarrhea, weakness, or unexplained bleeding or bruising. It's spread through contact with body fluids and contaminated surfaces. People can also catch it from infected animals. It is fatal in about half of cases who gets it or who get it. The suspected natural source of the Marburg virus is the African fruit bat, which carries the pathogen but does not fall sick from it. The virus can pass to primates in close proximity, including humans, and human-to-human transmission, and then occurs through contact with blood or other body fluids. And the World Health Organization said it is no longer recommending additional COVID-19 vaccine booster doses for regular medium-risk adults, as the benefit was marginal. Arlene Ocampo from our Maryland, USA Bureau.
The new COVID-19 vaccination guidance by WHO still prioritizes protection of populations at the greatest risk of death and severe disease from SARS-CoV-2 infection. The new roadmap considers the cost-effectiveness of COVID-19 vaccination for those at lower risk compared to other health interventions. This includes healthy children and adolescents. It also includes new recommendations on additional doses and spacing of boosters. The updated roadmap outlines 3 priority use groups for COVID-19 vaccination: high, medium, and low. High priority includes older adults, younger adults with significant comorbidities, people with immunocompromising conditions, pregnant persons, and frontline health workers. Medium priority includes healthy adults, usually under the age of 50 through 60, without comorbidities, and children and adolescents with comorbidities. Low priority includes healthy children and adolescents aged 6 months to 17 years. WHO re-emphasizes the importance of vaccinating those still at risk of severe disease. This including mostly older adults and those with underlying conditions, including with additional boosters. Arlene Ocampo, National Harbor, Maryland, Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
Meanwhile, Mozambique is going through its worst cholera outbreak in more than a decade in the wake of Cyclone Freddy. That according to the World Health Organization. Again, let's listen in.
Since the beginning of the outbreak, we have, as of yesterday, we have 47 districts in 8 provinces of the country, which corresponds to a total of 40% of all districts in the country. And the outbreak is still expanding geographically. Only last week we had 5 new districts reporting cases. Limani, which is the town which was most hit by Freddy with the landfall, the second landfall, within 14 days without water and electricity. In the last 24 hours, 132 people have been admitted to the cholera treatment centers, and 350 people did receive ambulatory care. While the cholera outbreaks regularly occur in Mozambique between October and April of every year, with more than 21,000 cases currently and 95 deaths. This is the largest outbreak in the last 20 years. In the coming weeks, the number of malaria cases will drastically increase, and the malnutrition rates, already very high, will go up. Climate change is not a future problem in Mozambique, it's here and now.
Now, WHO teams are responding to 5 concurrent health emergencies in Mozambique, namely, besides cholera and the Cyclone Freddy flooding, polio, COVID-19, and an ongoing humanitarian crisis in the north are causing a situation that is overwhelming health systems. Cyclone Freddy destroyed more than 132,000 homes, 184,000 people displaced, and while the floods are now receding, access to safe water is challenging, while around a third of crops have been destroyed. And finally, in our news, Tokyo sees another record early start to cherry blossom season. Dennis Liu reports.
Tourists and locals flock to see Tokyo's famed cherry blossoms as they reach peak bloom. The blooms are traditionally celebrated with hanami, or viewing picnics, which were stopped during the pandemic. The trees in Tokyo began flowering at the earliest time since observations began in 1953, matching records seen in 2020 and 2021. The Japan Meteorological Agency said cherry trees across Japan are blooming earlier than usual this year. You can also see similar scenes in cities such as Fukuoka, Osaka, and Nagoya. In past years, the country's meteorologists have linked increasingly early blooms to climate change, and temperatures in Tokyo have been unseasonably mild in recent days. For the first time in 3 years, parks administered by the Tokyo Metropolitan Government, such as Ueno Park, have allowed people to gather for parties involving food and drinks during the cherry blossom season. The Tokyo government had advised people to refrain from holding cherry blossom viewing parties at parks and public spaces in the wake of the pandemic. Japan's sakura or cherry blossom season is really anticipated by locals and visitors here, and the announcement of the Tokyo season start was alerted by major news agencies and covered live on television.
I'd say it's been incredible. We've been waiting a long time. We didn't really know what to expect either, and it's certainly been a different trip to anything else we've been on. We've travelled a lot, we've seen a lot, and it's something we're going to remember for a very long time. So we've had fantastic weather, and the Sakura forecast has actually, we've been lucky because it was actually brought forward, so we thought we'd miss it, and to be here today and see it all in bloom is lovely.
And we also got all these articles that the sakura was also a bit early to bloom, so we were afraid we weren't gonna make it. But I think overall the experience and feelings like happy, because we get to see them, the different colors and like the different states of the blooming.
It looks so beautiful and so special. We don't have those kind of trees in Denmark. It's right now it's just really cold and it's gray, and then we come down here and everything is just different. It's so beautiful and colorful.
やっぱり3年ぐらいずっとこうやって生で見るっていうのが通過するだけでこうやって立ち止まるっていうのができなかったので、こうやって会えるのがそれは嬉しいですね。やっとって。
Reporting from Tokyo, Japan, this is Dennis Liu. Stay alert, for we live in extraordinary times.
Thank you, Dennis. As always, I'll end the day on a thoughtful note. Our ability to look back and smile at our past is proof that God's plan is to keep us moving forward. This has been Eagle News International. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay alert, stay informed, because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.